We're going to start with item 2, which is review and discuss the 2026 fire department budget. Mostly going to, right now, toss this over to Chief Goodrow to walk us through your budget, talk about any highlights in there, anything coming up, and then we'll open it up to questions. You also, if you don't mind, people can ask questions as you're going through it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and all the members who are not on this committee, obviously the committee members, especially for being here, but the committee members on council that are here to have this dialogue. Members of my staff, as well as myself, always remain available. If you have questions, maybe as I prepared myself, as Mr. Tim and I were talking to, is sometimes you can prepare yourself for certain light items or items of interest as we go through these budgets, but if there's something I don't have the answer to tonight, I know where to find the answer and hopefully be able to provide that within 24 hours or less. So yeah, I guess we'll start kind of from the top, and again, interrupt me if you have a question, if there's something of interest that you want more detail on. Everything's kind of in the report, but obviously the the details are in the operation sometime of what costs are associated with the request. So the first page is just a general overview of what our staffing is on there from dating back to 2020. Tim kind of puts this together, and then we identify some overview of some of the services that we provide to our community. A lot of the things on there are kind of self-explanatory. Some of the other stuff are a little bit less frequent use, like water and ice rescue or high angle and low angle rope rescue or special operations, hazardous material response and support. Some of those things are less frequently used, but still we have different funding sources and associated costs with those things and training. So a lot of those get allocated into the accounts that are designated there. So that's kind of a brief overview of our operations. I made quick notes of some of the work also on our fire prevention side that was not listed there, to include code enforcement. Our division chief of EMS, Deputy Chief Agan, oversees that side of our operations, and we also see a revenue source through our 2% dues that also come back that assist us in some of the revenue side of things for doing code enforcement on an annual basis for our businesses and open residential areas. So that's kind of the first page. Any questions on that as I kind of move through to the next pages so I can give you an opportunity to speak on it? All right, I'll move through into 2025 accomplishments. So obviously that's this year. We still have yet 2 months here to go. But some of the bigger highlights, obviously our Mission Lifeline Gold Standard Award. This is the 5th year that we've gotten that. That's on our EMS side for meeting gold standards within the industry. Identified some advancement in EMS equipment and medication inventory systems. A lot of this drives improvement in our security of those medications or whatever else it be, to include some of the lower costs and the inventory that occurs there. The chief here and I were just talking about you put the term tactical equipment or medical equipment on anything, and it seems to raise the price right away. With those things comes potential waste. So this new inventory system that our division chief of EMS, Joel Feder, put together hopefully drives a lower cost and improves some of our medical supply room procurement. Depreciation schedule was identified with the assistance of Tim, and then just looking through some of our equipment and reorganization of our administrative staff, researching and expanding into different wellness initiatives for the firefighters, and then expanding training programs to increase participation and decrease that associated overtime cost that draws a lot of that up. Some of the goals that we identified through some strategic planning internally were objectives towards safer community risk thresholds. We talk about that quite frequently, especially when we talk about call volume and that ratio of adequate staffing, and then continue to work on recruitment and retention of our employees. We want a high quality training environment with personal investments into our firefighters, paramedics. We want this to be a place that people not only want to work at, but stay for the long term. So we somewhat identify some of those goals and objectives in this budget this year. And then just strengthening our relationship with those departments that are surrounding the city who rely on our response, whether it's our contractual areas, but also we have mutual aid agreements with a lot of the fire departments, and that's an important relationship that we must maintain. In the event we need their help, we also reciprocate and assist them in those endeavors too. So we move through to budget highlights. So I kind of highlighted a couple of the, what I wanted to do is rather than go line by line in the budget highlight section, I wanted to identify some of the things that are either increasing or decreasing depending on different things. So I'll draw my attention to a couple of the projects that we're looking at expanding areas of, which require a financial investment into. So one of the areas is the account that's titled physicals. We're seeing an increase due to the direct quote of that service that we have hazardous material team members and the requirement of those services to maintain the physicals that we get annually. It's basically a screening physical. But in that account, our human resource department reached out and wanted to expand and look at the contractual agreement, which has baseline physical assessments done every year annually. That's mutually agreed upon. And then we're also looking at expanding some of our cancer screening within that account. We've looked at a couple different vetted sources that have advanced cancer screening, understanding that the risks and hazards of the job and some of the chemicals that we're exposed to have a significantly higher rate of cancer within our profession. So some of those early detections could not only lead to early detection of cancer, but also decrease potential costs to the city in the event that someone has a significant event like that. When it comes to counseling, there was an increase in the vendor fee for our wellness checks every year. There is also a peer support team that has identified best practice within our industry that's looking to expand their peer support. And in tandem with that, they need a clinical mental health provider to oversee that team. It's a small investment, but then that peer support team is able to offer one-on-one services on a daily basis, but also have critical incident responses and have that clinician available 24/7. Currently, right now, the city has EAP services, which are offered Monday through Friday, scheduled appointments. But in the event of a crisis, someone having an issue while on duty or an issue in off hours, say on the weekend, to have that peer support team there for our members is very important. We talked about this when we expanded into this area of behavioral health support. This budget alone, this line item was only $12,000. That's a huge investment for our people, because I reiterate the stat that in police and fire, the number one statistic that leads to death in our professions is suicide. A couple of the highlights for money savings. We had a significant decrease in clothing and uniforms as an aggregate. This was due to a collective bargaining agreement that was through the union and the city, rather than us allocating almost an inflated amount of money being spent on uniforms per member. We provide each member of our organization almost a fund amount, and then they are responsible for replacing and identifying the need for new clothing and uniforms. So that's a significant savings within the city. And then preventative maintenance contracts was consolidated. That was something that it was identified with some of our high ticket items, so capital expenses related primarily to the EMS side. So there's power load cots, things that create a safer work environment, as well as some of our cardiac monitors. That's an expensive contract that oversees some of our critical equipment. And the nice thing about that contract, even though it is quite a bit of money, we have a vendor that's able to take care of those things within the week when we have an issue with one of those critical pieces of equipment. Fire department outlay vehicles and equipment. Those are kind of outlay accounts, depreciation accounts that we can go through itemized amounts, and that's kind of on that last page if you want to move through that. But that's just kind of summarizes our summary or the highlights. You'll see the last one that is of significance that I did not put in the report was our CAS accreditation. So we go through an accreditation process. We are the first in the state to achieve this EMS accreditation. And I believe there's only 3 other EMS agencies in the state that have or maintain their accredited status with this agency. Every 3 years, they come around and review our standard operating procedures, meet with some of our staff, review our procedures internally, and then reaccredit us. And usually they'll come out with a detailed report on anything else within the industry, trends, new things that we can look for to maintain that gold standard of care in the pre-hospital setting. So not to muddy the waters anymore, but there's a fire department budget and then there's an EMS budget. Both are very similar, and over the years, Tim has kind of analyzed kind of a 60-40 split, and I know sometimes that doesn't, get to the exact amount that we spend on each side, but based on kind of that model, you'll see where it's kind of a 60-40 split on some of these, and you can see where salary and wages are on an EMS budget side of things, and then there's also one on the fire side. So while it's somewhat confusing, the 2 budgets together make up the entire fire department's budget, which also includes EMS operations. I guess I'll leave it open to questions there. I kind of described a lot of the highlights, some of our goals for the next year, and our additional requests to kind of match those goals.
I'll start off by saying, Chief Goodrow, I commend you on your budget. It's for the fire department budget, it's only an increase of 1.6%, and an EMS budget of an increase of 1.1%, and that's pretty outstanding in today's world when we see rising costs and just about everything. So, hats off to you on that. But I do have a couple questions. I see in your overtime budget, you have budgeted 51,000, and in 2024's actual budget was 147. Just curious, how is that possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I looked at and discussed that overtime budget for both fire and EMS side of things, what I like to do is identify and delineate what is an expected overtime cost. So an expected overtime cost for our department is a contractual agreement training that we've identified. So we have training that's mandatory for certain scenarios, and we also have a state requirement, being a fire department, for maintaining certain trainings. So identify those trainings throughout the year that we'll allocate a certain amount towards that overtime account. Also, there's certain meetings and committees that occur throughout the year that we have to pay overtime to for maintaining a lot of the operations that we do. So through that, those are the 2 committees, or I guess you'd say categories, that I can control on overtime. We have a 12-member crew, and we allow only 2 members to be off on vacation. So in theory, there shouldn't be any overtime on a daily basis. Now, when we do have overtime that's driven up, typically that's due to some type of FMLA or extended leave that goes through city policy and gets approved down here. And while I can attempt to budget for those, that's kind of an unexpected expense on the overtime side of things, and it's very difficult to say that one year is going to be more than the other. And I think the Human Resource Committee had looked at some of those overtime costs and savings with short-term disability, but that was something that while one year we might save some money with that, we could go 2 or 3 years without having any savings. I'll use this year as an example of how it's difficult. I have one member that's on 12 months leave approved by the city. That's a federal leave. I have one member that was off for 9 months approved on an FMLA. I have one member that was off 6 months approved FMLA. I had one member off for 2.5 months through an FMLA. I had one member that was off for 2 months and then had retired thereafter after on an FMLA. I had another member that was off for 1 month on FMLA, another member off for leave for 3 months, and it just got recently extended to 6. And that's just shortcomings just this year on members that are employed with the city. Since January 1, I have not yet been full staff to that, as the first page indicates, 39 members. So while the HR department does a great job of identifying and working with me on recruitment and retention, yeah, the challenge always is filling those vacancies. And whenever these vacancies do occur, it's difficult for our profession to bring those folks back in and serve in the capacity that they once were when they have a medical leave that prohibits them from lifting over 20 pounds or doing any type of physical exertion within the parameters of their doctor's orders. So while it's difficult to have someone come back and do secretarial work, the overtime still exists when we have a position to fill on, say, an ambulance or a fire truck that they can't work in those capacities. So.
But there isn't like a different staffing practice or anything that's going to, I understand the causes of the overtime
Yep.
in previous budgets, but there's not a different staffing model or anything that you're
I wouldn't
bring that down to
propose
50.
cutting staffing or daily staffing, if that's what you're kind of alluding to.
Yeah.
Right now, we have a staffing model that has 10 personnel on duty from the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That kind of has that surge staffing. In theory, if only 2 members are allowed off per day, we shouldn't drop below that 10. There is a little cost savings because we go down to 9 personnel overnight in the event that we have some type of long-term leave or sick individual that called in sick outside of the expected PTO bank, I guess you'd say. So yeah, I wouldn't prescribe going lower than that amount because we would have to start shutting down either ambulances or fire trucks.
Okay. And then I know I saw under the EMS budget, there's state EMS grant of 190,000. I'm assuming is that the GEMT money?
Could you maybe
It's-
direct me towards
It's
that?
not in your.
Or is that of the
towards
EMS fund?
EMS fund? Yeah.
Okay, yep,
Yeah.
and that is GMT money, so if anybody's not aware, and Tim's spoken to this many times, a lot of times when we go out for service and we are providing care to somebody that's on Medicare and Medicaid, the Medicaid side of things has a what's called GEMT that went into legislation just recently. They're actually doing back pay checks, and the finance department and our fire department had to plug a bunch of numbers in based on the cost that that we to service a call. It gets down to the amount that we actually pay physically to go out the door and transport someone. That's not the cost that we always recoup when we're going out to do Medicare and Medicaid, because CMS establishes kind of that ceiling rate that we're able to collect on, and we only collect to that amount, even though the expenses for the city is obviously more than that amount. This legislation allows the feds, or well, in this case, the state of Wisconsin, to reimburse a portion of that back to the municipalities that are serving those Medicare and Medicaid patients. In this case, the 2023 back pay check, I believe, was $190,000. We're going through desk review on the 2024 back payment, and then we will enter all of the data going forward, and I'm hoping to see that program continue through the state.
Continue year after year, right?
Yeah, I would anticipate it would, but obviously that shortcoming, would be felt if that program wasn't continued. I will take a moment to state that our Medicare and Medicaid client payer mix in our community is around 82%, which is exceedingly high compared to other communities.
Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.
First, happy National First Responders Day to you both. We appreciate everything you do. Ben, under the fire department vehicle outlay,
Yes.
it looks like you're looking for a new vehicle for that. Is that under the fire vehicle line item?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we identify replacement vehicles, that'll come out of capital expenses.
Okay.
Now, in the fire department budget, within the operating budget, which is on page 72 of 177 of the, and Tim may have changed it a little bit, so maybe that's not, I guess the first fire department budget, under fire vehicles, that's just general maintenance for all vehicles that are not EMS vehicles. And that 80,000 that's put in there is just the amount that we allocate towards vehicle maintenance of unexpected things that come up. So these aren't identified projects that we want to do, or a new vehicle. These are unidentified things that come up maintenance-wise that we have to keep these rigs in service. The outlay request for this year is to replace a staff vehicle that we have. We actually adopted an old police department canine vehicle about 4 years ago, and that vehicle is thus less reliable and needs replacing at this time. It's definitely worked its way through city government at 2 public agencies and has seen its end of life. So that's the request there.
Will the police department be pushing out other vehicles that we could replace that one with another police department vehicle, or do we have to get a brand new one?
It's difficult. I don't mind buying a used vehicle for this sake, as long as it's reliable. The quote that we got, and typically, these dealerships are able to provide us a public service quote for a vehicle that, is either new or 1 year old, that's in very good shape, at a very competitive price compared to, say, buying used. Again, the amount here is to totally outfit that vehicle with, all the appropriate internals and a radio which needs replacing. So the price there, I think I got a quote for right around $42,000 for the vehicle at Rapids Ford locally, and then everything else is included to service that thing with lights, sirens, and everything else, emergency operations that it would need. I wouldn't be opposed to looking at something used, but I don't want to have to be back every 3 or 4 years, and that's what my worry would be, is if we're always lending or borrowing a piece of equipment, say, that has been identified as out of service for the police department, but now it could be utilized as an emergency vehicle for the fire department. So that's kind of my hesitation in repurposing always.
Do we know what that cost is if we use an ex-police vehicle or not?
I believe they would have a radio outfitted with it, but we would have to, strip decals and identification, and then potentially look at, their radio system of reprogramming a head unit to ours. So I could look into that more.
But the vehicle would just be moved over to you? There's no cost to purchase it from the police department or anything?
I would anticipate that the police department would probably want to repost it on the municipal site if they could. We have recently posted things on the municipal website for equipment that we no longer can use. And I know last year Chief Hostins was pretty adamant about repurposing some of that, those funds from that for other projects that he has. So I would guess that he would want to do the same.
Yeah. A lot of our older vehicles we'll use for training, or they'll be repurposed for like our auxiliary unit or something like that. But most of the time, they're pretty much at the end of their life for use as an emergency vehicle. So, I mean, I can't think of one of our vehicles that we would have that would fit the purpose and be able to be repurposed to the fire department for use in an emergency, like if they needed to run lights and sirens and know that it's going to be reliable for that purpose. But like I said, when we will repurpose them for take them to training, things like that, where they're not going to be driven hard or in an emergency type situation, so they're a little bit more reliable to hold for that. But we keep our vehicles for our patrol vehicles for around 5 years, and after 5 years, they've got a lot of miles on them. They've been driven hard, and I don't know that I don't know that I would recommend that they be used for any other purpose than a utility type vehicle. I certainly wouldn't recommend repurposing them for an emergency vehicle purpose. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the vehicle that we have from the police department that we got 4 years ago, like I said, has 130,000 miles on it. Obviously, the majority of it was in town, driven pretty hard, obviously in emergency response. So,
And that's used for admin to go to a call?
yeah,
Or-
that would be supplementing admin on an EMS call, typically through our EMS division.
Do you know how many times that is?
I would have to pull up a report for that. It's pretty seldom, but I would anticipate at least once a week.
Thank you.
Chief, back to the overtime.
Yeah.
Are we tracking to separate emergency response training and leave coverage?
Yeah, my staff internally, per directive a few years ago, started categorizing it. So we categorize it into different banks of how those overtime hours, each hour is getting generated from. For example, a few of the banks include emergency call-ins and stayover. So think emergency call-ins being there's a large incident and we have many firefighters that are called back to the station. A stayover would be you're getting close to leaving at 7 a.m. when shift change occurs, and there is a call that comes in at 6:45. Your relief isn't there quite yet or ready to go. You go on that call, you finish it up, and you leave at 7:45. You're going to put in for 45 minutes of overtime afterwards. So those are two banks for emergency operations. Things that fall within either city, state, or federal policy would be something like FMLA is tracked for the amount of hours that are generated from some type of Family Medical Leave Act. Sick hours, which is a contractual thing, and the city bargains with the local with, and then any type of short crew. So anytime that one crew, like I had indicated before, typically a crew has 12 personnel on it. If we have a crew that only has 11, because we're still looking to fill that vacancy, then any overtime that would be accumulated from that is kind of deducted into that category.
So you've had an opportunity to take a look at those numbers prior to putting your budget together?
Yes, and again, those are unexpected. So the idea when I put that budget together for overtime costs is that we have a full roster and there's no FMLA leave.
Okay. The sick leave policy, is there any shown measurable impact at all to date?
We haven't completed the year, and the contractual agreement didn't go into effect until mid-year. So while I'll look at those numbers and kind of see, I'll probably have a better idea into next year of how it might look to see if that impact is resolving the sick issue that we have occurring at the fire department. You know, I think looking at the next contractual agreement, we'll have a really good idea of whether we've made any measurable impact. And I'll definitely have advice on, you know, the next contractual agreement if I see an opportunity for the city.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anyone else got any questions or comments for Chief Goudreau? All right, now that he's reviewed his budget, would anyone like to propose any changes? Or discuss any possible changes? All right, going once, going twice. Alright. So we'll move on. Thank you, Chief Goodrow.
Thanks.
We'll move on to item 3, review and discuss the 2026 police department budget.
Good evening, everyone. Guess I'll kind of start similar to Chief Goodrow, going over our overview. Staffing levels are the same as last year. Our accomplishments, we implemented the Employee Wellness Initiative. Sorry, is that better? Okay. We implemented our Employee Wellness Initiative where we require all of our employees to do a visit with a counselor. We implemented the co-responder program in partnership with the ODC and the Wood County Sheriff's Office. That is solely grant funded. There are no funds from the police department funding that. There might be some nominal, if she needs to print something out or something like that, but all of her other expenses are through a grant from the Legacy Foundation. We were given a grant from Heartland Farms for drone and have implemented a drone as first responder program that has been very successful so far. One highlight, we got a call from Portage County. They're looking for a missing child that had walked away from home, and they had called in several other agencies, including Wisconsin Rapids, to come out and take the drone out there. And utilizing the drone, we were able to find the young child in a very short amount of time. We have done a number of things to streamline our department report writing process, save a lot of time for patrol officers, supervisors, and clerical staff. We're retired Canine Lex this year and also got a new dog, Klaus. And Klaus was also purchased 100% with a grant, and then the canine training for Klaus and Officer Creer was funded through donations. We revised the uniforms and the squad decals for our auxiliary unit. One of the concerns that I had coming into this job was that our auxiliary officers were wearing uniforms that were identical to our police officers' uniforms, except that the patch said auxiliary, but it wasn't immediately identifiable. So, concern for safety for the auxiliary officers, they don't carry firearms, things like that, as well as, if the public has a comment or concern or complaint regarding how an auxiliary officer handles something, then they're immediately identifiable now as an auxiliary officer, not a sworn police officer on the street. So, got a couple of my command officers through some pretty major command or executive level courses. Lieutenant Burris completed the School of Police Staff and Command, and Lieutenant Lubeck completed Wisconsin Command College, which also graduates as a certified public manager from that course. And then Deputy Chief Scott DeWitt successfully completed the 10-week in-residence course in Quantico, Virginia, the FBI National Academy. For 2026, we're working on completing our policy, our updating and completing our policy manual so that we can, my goal is to get that, all of our policies posted online so that, the public can go on and see what our policies are and things like that. But I'd like to get that completed policy manual done first. We established or reestablished our recruitment team for our efforts in recruiting new law enforcement officers. We're currently down 3 officers, 5 total that are not on the street, and that has proved to be difficult recruiting new officers. I think in the last couple of months, we've probably interviewed 20 individuals and ended up with 2 out of all of those that we were able to hire and put through the training. So it's a very trying time right now for recruiting officers and getting them trained up. And if you hire an officer that doesn't have the basic law enforcement training, and I mean it's almost a year before they're out on their own and really any good to you. So it's very imperative that when we get an opening or have an idea that we're going to get an opening, that we start the process and get moving on recruiting people. So been in discussions with Midstate and their law enforcement training people in regards to doing some reality-based training. They have a virtual reality simulator that they purchased there, that they've given us the green light to go and utilize for doing some reality-based training scenarios and things like that. So that's been a positive. We haven't had an opportunity to get over there due to staffing levels and things of that nature, but we're working on getting that worked in. Also, we've been working to partner with Midstate Technical College to bring relevant police training to central Wisconsin. One of the issues with training, the major costs involved in training is in the travel, lodging, per diem, things like that. So if we can bring relevant training to central Wisconsin, to either the campus here in Rapids or to the Stevens Point campus, we can send our officers to training for a lot less overall costs. So we've been working with them to try to draw some of those training courses here, and as Wisconsin Rapids PD is the sponsor of that training, and then Midstate hosting, giving us a location and facilities for that training. So continue with professional development and working and defining the co-responder program and aligning with the needs of the community. And then I would like to start working towards a peer support group team for the police department. So there's those things. Similar to Chief Goodrow, I highlighted some of the items in our budget that to discuss, starting with overtime. I did a little different than Chief Goodrow did, in that I took into consideration the cost of overtime over the last several years, and also averaged out where we are this year. And if we continue the rest of 2025 in the way that we have, we're looking at probably running just a little bit over $300,000 for our overtime budget for this year. And then if you look back, 24 was a little over 300,000, 23 was over 300,000, 22 was over 300,000, and if you take into consideration, the increase in wages through step increases and cost of living increases and things like that, it has come down, even though in 2025, there was the contractual increase plus the increases with the salary schedule. All that considered, 2025 is going to be even a little bit less than 24 and 23. So we have been working to bring those costs down a little bit. But also taking into consideration the fact that we've been so short-staffed that a lot of the costs for the overtime are going to be offset by the reduction in what we're paying in salary, the wages and benefits. So, anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, you're tracking right at 300, and you were 347 last year, so I was just good commend you on that.
Thank you. Let's see, moving down here. Under forms and printing, it's a moderate increase on that line, and that $1,500 increase is to cover the costs of getting new business cards for everyone on the police department, since we changed our website and all of our email addresses are going to be changed and things like that. So that's where that increase has come in to play. If you go down to the telephone item, the 53102, there is an increase there of 9120. And the reason I'm asking for additional monies there is in the hopes of providing all of our sworn staff with work phones, cellular phones. There have been, a lot of changes in computer security, multi-factor authentication, emails, things like that. Our I Am Responding program, our Time, our Axon, Call You, TLO, Flock, and several different programs that we now, or software programs that we now have available to us, are requiring more heavy security, and doing that through email. We had a situation earlier this year where our email actually went down for a time, and we had officers that couldn't sign on to their computers in their cars because the only way that they could sign on was if they could access their email to get the code, and the email was down for that amount of time. So we also have a new scheduling software, an online software that we went to, Pace Scheduler, that would give them access to the schedule on their work phone, as well as when overtime shifts come available, callback, things like that. But the total, that 9120, could be reduced by about, let's see what I got here, $2,520 a year if we provide everyone with their own work phone. Then we can change the city policy where our lieutenants receive a stipend. Our lieutenants who don't have a work phone receive a stipend for their personal phones. We could eliminate that, and that would save us $2,520 a year, so which would actually just bring the proposed cost to $6,600 a year for the whole year, to provide everyone with their own work phone. That also includes repurposing the squad phones that we already have. So we would need to get an additional find the number here.
Hey, Dan, on those phones?
Huh?
Will the policy say that they have to carry that all the time?
So no, we can't require, we can require our supervisors or our exempt employees, our lieutenants and above to carry a phone. But we couldn't, require our union personnel to carry the phone without, you know, some contract negotiation in that, so, but that's a good question. But we could require them to have it on and with them at work, which would also, you know, assist in communication while they're working. You know, a lot of times no, there are phones specifically assigned to each of our squads, and then there's also a lieutenant phone, and we could, like I said, repurpose those phones, and then we'd have better communication between officers and dispatch, and it would shorten the time to get a hold of people and things like that, not trying to figure out what phone they have or what car they're in, and stuff of that nature. So. Any other questions about that? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So suggestion that the department go with the stipend versus the phone. You said that saves, correct?
So yeah, we have the stipend for only our lieutenants and that don't have city phones.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have the same effect if we did it for all of our officers, because we can't require them to and other problems that you run into with that as well is they're using it at work. If they have their work email on it, then they're subject to discovery in court cases and things like that. So if they're using their personal phone and open records and stuff of that nature, so if they're using their personal phone for work-related activities and they put their work email on their personal phone, and we get an open records request for their for their personal phone, that just really kind of muddies the water.
What was, you mentioned the phones, and then you said, and there was a cheaper alternative, and you mentioned
it just reduces. We currently have a city policy where our lieutenants that do not currently have a work phone get a stipend.
Yep.
And that to cover part of their cost of their personal cell phones. And we could eliminate that policy, which would reduce the cost of the overall cost for the year from that 9,120 to 6,600. So we would save that 2,520 by eliminating that policy in regards to our lieutenants, and that would reduce the overall cost. I'm just, I guess, pointing out that the item in the budget shows a $9,120 increase, whereas it's not really that amount if we take all of that into consideration.
But there is an option to save $2,520 by changing policy, you said?
By changing, you're talking about by eliminating the stipend altogether?
What you had mentioned earlier, and that now we're at that. What is the 2,520 that we could save?
So we have a policy,
Yeah.
where our lieutenants receive a stipend. Our lieutenants that don't have a work phone. So I mean, like I have a work phone.
Okay.
Deputy chief has a work phone. Detectives, things like that, right? Our lieutenants that are not provided with a work phone get a stipend to cover some of the costs of their personal phone.
Mm-hmm.
If we went with everyone having a work phone, then we could eliminate that policy for our lieutenants and eliminate that stipend. They would no longer get that stipend, but they would have a work phone.
And that's the increase, or that's the savings?
That would be the savings.
Okay. And that, did you put that in here?
I did. Well, it's in the notes in there.
Okay.
So down to the education reimbursement. That's that's a contractual. That increase of $5,000 is in line with the new contract, union contract. Mm. So, software licensing. That increase is due to the $3,000 increase is due to our pace scheduling software for the entire department, and that's it. Celebrate increased, so that's a little bit there. Pace scheduling software. Yeah, so it's a combination of that. The increase in our Celebrate, which is our cell phone software, and then our scheduling software. And, safety. Officer Pilot came to me this year and asked for an increase in the safety fund for. He gets materials and handouts and things like that for education for kids in the schools and things like that. And he said that the costs have increased considerably, and he was looking at maybe increasing that budget item to accommodate the increase in cost for those items. Then the mental health checkups, that is just an increase in the contract cost for those services. Under crime prevention, this is another one that increased a little bit. The 3720, that item has increased. We have gotten quotes to replace our bicycles for our bike patrol unit for community-oriented policing functions, using them during the 4th of July and parades and other community policing type functions. Our bikes are over 10 years old, and they're starting to show that wear and get to the point where they're costing us more money each year to maintain them, and it's time to replace them. That cost would be to replace all 6 of our bikes. And moving down to investigations, that increase is a request from our detective lieutenant, Lieutenant Jordan Lubeck, because we used to get reimbursed from the Drug Task Force for discretionary funds, buy funds for purchasing drugs and confidential through confidential sources and things like that, and we no longer get those reimbursements. So that request is to cover that loss of funds.
Chief, on that,
Uh-huh.
those buys to for those drug busts or whatever,
Mhm.
do you recoup any of those costs, or do you get any seizures that would go back to your budget that would
Yeah,
help
so-
offset that?
Yeah, sometimes we even get the money back from the buy. So So what we would do, great question, I appreciate that, is we would take cash, we would document, we take pictures of it, document serial numbers, things like that, and if, say, we do a drug buy and then make an arrest from that buy, try to arrest the individual while they still have that cash on them, then we can get that money back. We can document, hey, we got this money back, and then if there is money lost, then it can be sought in, in the courts, restitution. So it's just having that amount on hand so that, it's not necessarily that we're going to spend all that money. It's just that we would have that on hand in the case that we would need it for those types of purchases.
Could you explain what you mean when you say you used to be reimbursed for that?
Yeah, so we were part of a task force that, and
Oh, the
we don't
task
have,
force.
yeah, we don't have anybody currently as a member of that, so they would reimburse us for those funds, and we currently aren't a member of that right now, so we're not getting reimbursed for those funds. SRT, we do have a request for some new helmet-mounted headsets for our special response team members. The current headsets continue to require repair due to wear and age, and the newer headsets would be more ergonomic. They would mount to the helmet, not on the individual's head, where there's the current ones, they go on the person's head and then they put the helmet on, and there's pressure points and causes headaches and things like that for the individuals that are wearing them. The new headsets would mount directly to the helmet and not on the individual's head, so there would not be any pressure points or things like that, any pain associated with the use of the new ones. And then our current ones, we could repurpose some of those for our crisis negotiators where they don't use helmets, so there wouldn't be an issue with them putting that on their head and then putting a helmet on and then causing the pain and discomfort from those pressure points there. So that's what that increase is from. And then we need to replace several of our chemical and distraction devices. Some of them have been used, some of them are expired. We will repurpose expired munitions for training purposes, things like that, but they can't be relied upon for use in the field once they're expired. And then the last item there is ballistic shields. Our current shields have exceeded their life expectancy. Ballistic rating is over 8 years past its expiration. So there's significant wear and damage on the existing shields from deployments and training. Again, we could still use the existing shields for training purposes. Just new shields would be required for deployments. Moving down to the K-9 program, we do have a little bit of an increase there due to requests to purchase the same headsets for our K-9 officers, which we currently only have one K-9 officer, so we could probably get away with buying one headset instead of two. And then some other items, ballistic plates for their vest, and a vest carrier for the handler, and then it also includes purchasing of canine hot and pop, which is a door popper for the dog, and it also monitors the heat or the temperature inside the squad car, and alerts the officer, command officer, dispatch, and whoever else is in the communication train if there's a temperature increase in the car that would require immediate attention, and to get to the dogs. There's been, I don't know if you've seen across the country, but there have been several instances where dogs have died sitting in the back of squad cars because the air conditioning failed or the car died and the officer didn't realize it in time, and the heat in the car went up and was too much for the dog. So those are required. Then the crossing guard budget there's a little bit of a reduction there from salary and wages, and I did have a conversation with the superintendent of the school district regarding possibly sharing some costs with crossing guards. He did not make me any promises. I told him, that the city had a budget deficit and was trying to figure out creative ways to save some money. He said that he would look into it and get back with me, but said that they too were had a significant budget deficit. So emergency communications, there's no change there. The outlay, two things here. Our flock cameras. Flock requires a certain number of cameras for an agency our size to maintain our search functions and other advanced features of their software. So we need to get one more camera. We have 5, and we need to have 6 to maintain the same level of service there. So that's an increase of about $3,000. The Axon body-worn cameras and tasers, that went up a little bit because our previous contract for our in-car cameras and our investigation interview camera have come up and needed to be renewed for next year. And that was actually, in prior years, was in a different line item, but that's now combined into this item, so that shows all of that combined into the one contract for the camera, the in-car cameras, the body-worn cameras, our tasers, and our interview camera. And then $5,000 of that is for the job function testing that I was asked to add to the budget. So.
Thanks, Chief. Just a couple questions. One, you mentioned siren maintenance in your budget highlights.
Uh-huh.
And annual replacement. Is that replacement of batteries for sirens in your squads, or is that
No.
siren?
So the community sirens
Community sirens.
Mm-hmm.
So-
The tornado sirens, whatever you want to call them.
Okay. That
and-
comes out of your budget.
I'm sorry.
That comes out of your budget, the community sirens.
Yeah, I guess for lack of a better place, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
Is that a city responsibility or is that more of a county emergency management responsibility? Cities? Okay.
So, so yeah, that's all. But we do schedule the maintenance on that. So we do handle it.
Okay.
So I mean but we have since I've been here. So
And then we talked a little bit about reimbursement and revenues. The EMS fund, I was able to find that, in the EMS fund, they show a $2.488 million total revenue, but I couldn't find any revenues under the police department budget. Do you have any idea what kind of revenues the police department has?
I would have to defer that
Yeah.
question.
The majority of the revenues that the police department generates is the municipal court fines and costs. For the 26 budget, it's estimated about 210,000 for that revenue. And then parking violation forfeitures of 6,825. And then we
Okay.
get a little bit of court fines and costs from the county of $500, but those are the major revenue sources.
And along those lines, in future budgets, it'd be nice to, I know there's a lot of grants that both the police and fire department are working hard to get, and they do receive these grants.
Mhm.
But it would be nice to, I know the EMS grant is listed through the GMT, but it just would also be, I think, a good way to highlight the work you guys do in obtaining some of these grants.
Mhm.
To have those listed as far as what kind of grants are obtained over the course of the year.
Sure. Currently, one of the bigger grants that we use is the ballistic vest grant. So we get reimbursed from the federal government for half of the cost of ballistic vests. And we do look at grants and grant funding for different things, like the drone was provided to us, well, through a donation, but and then things like that. So when they come up, when applicable grants come up, we do look into those things and apply for them as they become available. So, and I would be happy to include those when we have them. So.
Great.
Yeah,
I guess while we're on the topic of grants, any opportunities for the flock cameras or the body worn cameras? Those are recurring charges, right, for the capital?
Yeah, they are. So typically, the grants that are available for those things are for starting up, the initial purchase of those items and initially starting those programs. And I know Wisconsin Rapids did obtain a grant to when they first got body-worn cameras, but that was years ago. And most of the available funds are just earmarked for that, for just starting up the program, not continuing with it. And of course, if something became available that would help us with that moving forward, we'd definitely be interested in applying for those grants. So.
Not that I want to question decreases, but can you go over the police range and supplies?
Yeah, so last year we purchased some firearms. So that's not a we replaced all our duty weapons.
Okay.
So that was kind of a one-time request in the budget last year. It'll be several years before we need to do that again. So that's where that reduction came in, or that reduced request came in.
That sounded familiar. I couldn't remember. Something.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Hoskins. I just want to point out, and I'm not picking on the police department here, but we're gonna have to do this across the board. So the police department budget is going up $214,686 for 2026. Being that we're at a $620,000 deficit, before we move on, and while we got the fire chief here too, if there's anything that anybody would like to specifically talk to them about to work towards reducing the $620,000 deficit, now would be the time. Then those numbers can be reflected. And also for you guys, if you could possibly go back through your budgets, if I know everything's necessary, but if there's anything that you feel you could go without or maybe pass up this time around, and so in the case that there is something that you really need, when it comes down to it, we have to get that 620 down, and rather than take something you might not want out, if you voluntarily do it, that'll make it a lot easier.
Sure. I will point out that a little over $100,000 of that is an increase in our overtime budget and in our salaries and wages. So that reduces that 214,000 to, less than 100,000. And I already do have a list of things that, like the bikes, for instance. Could I buy 2, 3 bikes instead of 6? That would save a couple of, $1,000, whatever. Also, trying to think. Actually, I have a list here.
And you don't have to necessarily go over
Okay.
all of it right now.
Sure.
I mean, we can hear that if you want, but I think
Right. So there are a couple things, and
Yeah.
and I can talk to to Tim with about those things. But I have gone through everything pretty extensively and identified just exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
So yeah, I'll definitely talk to Tim about all those things.
yeah, anything you guys got, if you could forward to Tim, because this obviously can't be the final budget across the city. I
Understood.
mean, it's not just you guys; it's across the city. So we're gonna have to come to one that doesn't have a deficit. Of course, I'm not gonna go over the entire state law, but it's not an option. We have to get there. So anything you guys got, you can send to Tim or send to all of us. And if anything is on the top of your head right now that you want to talk about, feel free. But we do need those. So.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll speak on my behalf. The fire department looked at a salary increase in wages that were approved here this year, obviously. As cost of living and contractual agreements, health insurance and everything else included with the benefits and roll-ups of employees. As we all know in this room, that's obviously the most important and expensive piece of capital. Outside of that, keeping the lights on, trained staff, and all the equipment necessary to do our operations. I was able to find, in anticipation of the comments of the chair, I was able to find a reduction of $47,762 in this year's budget for us. So I don't know that I'm going to find any other opportunities to save on our operating budget.
And again, if you could just get those numbers out to us and Tim, so we can reflect whatever the 47 is coming from for the final budget, and anything you come with too, please. Anybody else got anything for either of the chiefs?
I will probably just take that one minor suggestion that you only have one K-9 officer, you probably only need one headset. And I'm, at this point, I'm nowhere near in favor of the 10 grand for the drug officers either.
I disagree, but we can agree to disagree.
Let's talk about it, we're all here, so if that's something, what do we got? We got 7 people here. If that's something we're interested in telling the chief right now that,
Michael, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's an integral tool that they use for those investigations or drug busts, or whatever you want to call them. I think taking that away and not having that piece in that investigation or that, I mean, I think we're putting them in a bad position, and maybe we don't know the problem that's going on in this city
Right.
just sitting here, but there's a problem.
Yeah, oh,
And I think anything we can do to help that, to me, $10,000 is a drop in the bucket to help with that. And if we can recoup some of it, even better.
Yeah,
why,
that's correct. It would not having those funds would essentially cripple our drug investigations, and obviously that's up to you, but I think it's a very big part of what we do, and obviously drug addiction and things of that nature are a societal problem. But we use those funds to help our investigations, and again, we'll recoup some of those. So it's not like we're getting $10,000 and writing a check and spending $10,000. Some of it we won't get back. Some of it we will, and some of it we would get back in restitution or whatever. But ultimately, without having that ability, a lot of the drug investigations are not going to be completed.
why are we no longer in a task force?
Staffing. We only have 3 investigators right now, or detectives right now. We do have one slotted to move back in there when our staffing levels get back to normal, and then that's something that we can look at possibly, becoming a member of again. But at this point in time, we don't have the ability to provide an officer or a detective to that type of outside position, I guess, for lack of a better term.
And is the 10,000 just an estimated, seems like a really ballpark number,
So it's based on the estimates that I got from our lieutenant in investigations, or detective lieutenant, as to what he would need, or what they would need to do their investigations. And again, will we spend it all? Probably not. But having it available to us, especially for multiple investigations, and say we use that money for a buy, well, when we get it back, we have to put it in our evidence as part of the case. So we don't recoup that until after the case has been adjudicated. So, we use those funds for the buy. I mean, we may get it back, but it doesn't immediately go back into circulation or into our ability to use it. So.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily pull it out then. I just wanted to know the background on it.
no, it's good. It's good. The discussion is good. That the only reason I pulled that out for discussion is to get some going, because we do need to have it, and we do need to talk about these things. So any ideas, even if they're retracted, are great. Let's discuss it all. Anything else for the chiefs at this time from anyone? All right. Well, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
We'll obviously be seeing each other, talking more. We'll follow along on this process.
Yeah, I'll echo what Dan said too, and encourage anyone to reach out, regarding both of our budgets. We're always available. If we can't get the answer immediately, like I said, leading into this, we hope to be as transparent as possible. So thank you for taking the time and having these discussions.
Thank you both. All right, so item 4 is next meeting reminder, which is Thursday. At 5. We're having Paul in Public Works. We'll do Public Works. I also, before the agenda goes out, was wondering if the committee would like to take up Waterworks and Lighting, the Heart of Wisconsin contract, and the Humane Society contract on Thursday.
Works for me.
Dean?
Are we in here? Did we,
So it'll be the Heart of Wisconsin contract, Humane Society contract, Street Department, and you wanted Water and Light?
Yes.
I will contact, see if they're available.
'Kay.
For those meetings, and if they're,
Engineering with the streets.
Yep. Let's
Alright.
bring them in too. So, Thursday, October 30th at 5 p.m.
are we in here, or or are we in a room?
We'll have that come out on the agenda.
Okay.
All right, item 5 is adjournment. Meeting adjourned at 6:22 p.m. Thank you.